All right, guys, we are talking fantasy football. Consheepsus live today on the show. We've got Jimmie Maverick. What is going on, Jim?
I'm having just glad to be here, enjoying the beautiful weather. How are the fires out by you, man? I've seen the smoke in like New York City. It's crazy. Are you guys impacted by that, or is that
I'm
not
in the
getting you?
northeast Buffalo area right now, and yeah, it's been foggy. It's been kind of ugly out here, but we're trying to breathe inside the best we can. But it's been pretty. Overall, it could be better. The air quality's crappy, but we're getting through, Jim.
Yeah, that's good, man. I mean, forest fires are something that we deal with out west all the time, and but this spring has been amazingly wet and rainy, and so there's no forest fires in New Mexico, and it's beautiful. So we're just really enjoying it out here. It's very nice.
Yeah,
So
speaking of enjoying it, I'd like to enjoy the truth a little bit more, but there's a lot of fantasy football Consheepsus lies going on, Jim. Now, you like to call it copy and paste. I like to call it copy and paste. But what we're going to talk about here, Jim, do you want to explain a little bit? You want to kind of design this show and talk about this particular subject. Kind of explain what we're talking about here today.
Well, when I build my projections for players, I often use the Consheepsis sites just as a baseline, right? And I'm just looking at how do they think this player is going to do this year? And I got to tell you, man, I am seeing the worst projections I think I've ever have, and it's on two main types of players. The first kind of player are the breakout players. These first and second year players or maybe even third year in some cases. They're like, it seems like they're absolutely terrified to project a breakout. They're just copy and paste whatever they did last year is what they think they're going to do this year. And I think that in many situations, it's just ridiculous because in a lot of cases, we've got a vastly improved situation for that player that's going to cause them to really come out and be
Right.
great for fantasy, but they're not even showing it. They're afraid of. And then the other kind of player that they're totally afraid of doing is the players that are the older players, the big names. I think they're super afraid of insulting these guys or offending them. And so they're basically just saying, "Oh yeah, this running back is now 28 years old or 29 years old, but he'll do exactly what he did last year. Don't worry about it. He's gonna. Oh, it'll be a little bit worse, but basically, they're they're giving you bad information because they're undervaluing the breakouts and they're overvaluing these older players straight up. And so I'm calling them out today.
Yeah, I don't believe in projections, and I just want to talk a little bit about lies. We're going to show you straight up. So we're going to pull up a player, like example, Trevor Lawrence is one of the guys we're going to talk about, and we're going to show you kind of where they're projecting him, how BS these projections are, and Garrett Wilson. And you can kind of see like the scenario has completely changed around these people. Trevor Lawrence gets an upgrade at wide receiver, Garrett Wilson gets a better quarterback, right? But they always tend to copy and paste, and that's why the rankings. Now I've got one of these fancy schmancy magazines here. And Jim was saying before the show, you can't use a fantasy magazine because everybody's online. And I get it. But typically and generally, the guideline that's in these magazines is similar to what the rankings are and similar to when you're drafting on whatever site you're drafting on. But the ADP falls in line with these guys. Example, Jonathan Taylor last year was a number one running back going off the board. And I said, let's take a look at the scenario. Jonathan Taylor, okay? New quarterback, new situation, pinnacle year. Cooper Kupp, Super Bowl hangover, right? What goes up must come down. Regression, injuries happen, things happen. But everyone's just like, no, 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 it's going to be Cooper Kupp on top again. Not the case, right? So you really got to project and anticipate. And again, that's what our courses do. So if you haven't got it, make sure you guys secure the 16 round draft solution. I've linked it here below. And also the 16 round plus tool. Now, the 16 round plus tool is an additional tool you can get that's going to give you a ton more information, stats, analytics. You can open this up, a draft tool while you're drafting, and it's going to give you a major advantage. You're going to know when contract years are. You're going to know everything. That's everything. And again, I'm telling you, under programs at thefantasyfootballcounselor.com, go check it out right now, guys. Under programs at thefantasyfootballcounselor.com, go check it out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just start talking about the first guy. Let's talk about Garrett Wilson because this is the first guy that I was like, all right. Garrett Wilson is very highly rated on draft boards, man. He is going early second round. I think deservedly so. Last year, amazing season, man. 147 targets.
Yeah.
And that was with 3 bad quarterbacks. You got to remember, last year, Garrett Wilson had Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco throwing him passes during the course of the year. This guy still got 147 targets. He got ended up with 83 catches for 1,103 yards and 4 touchdowns. Outstanding rookie season. And people are very high on them, but the projections are ridiculous. I mean, first of all, we got a nice upgrade with the quarterback. We got Aaron Rodgers, who, despite my concerns about his age and about potentially him falling off, even if Aaron Rodgers falls off, he's better than either Zach Wilson or Mike Wright or Joe Flacco. Would you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and not only that, once you have this rotation of quarterbacks, is you're never really honed in and building that rapport with the one. So it's better to have the one. And not only that, you're getting one that's better than all 3 offerings that were there last year. And Garrett Wilson thrived. So I'm expecting a significant increase in a lot of his projection. And yet, as you can see, guys, the projection is very similar.
well, in fact, it's, I mean, for total fantasy points, it's about the same. That's about what they're projecting. They're saying, first of all, Garrett Wilson's targets are going to fall from 147 to 124. Now, you and I know Aaron Rodgers, and when Aaron Rodgers has an elite wide receiver option, does he only give him about that much volume, or does he hyper target them?
Yeah, if it's a good guy, he hyper targets him. We saw this with Devontae Adams years ago.
Yeah, not just Devontae Adams, but before him,
Who was it? Jordan,
his receivers.
Remember Jordan Nelson years ago?
Yeah, Jordy Nelson. Yeah, exactly.
Years ago.
Yeah. So anyway, they're projecting 124 targets. They're projecting his total yardage is going to go down from 1,100 down to 1,032. They are projecting his touchdowns will go up from 4 to 8. So basically, they're saying on the projections that he's only going to score 13 more fantasy points than he did last year. Right. How realistic does that sound?
It's not realistic, and that's what they do. This is what the Consheepsus do. They copy and paste, and again, so many players you see that are in just better positions, more in a situation to thrive, and yet they continue to just copy and paste because that's where they were last year, and that's not how it works. Now, again, I'm just going to pull up the magazine here, the Trusty magazine, and if you look, guys, they sometimes when there's a player they fall off and they know they're wrong, they quietly go off into the shadows. Kind of like, remember that Homer Simpson meme where Homer Simpson's standing up front and then he kind of fades into the bushes?
Right, he backs into him, yeah.
So that's exactly what they're doing. And they did it with DeAndre Swift. I mean, Swift is a guy, they were all over here. Where is he here? In this magazine, he was 11th. You can kind of see it here. But everywhere else, I'm going to pull it up here. There's Swift right there. Number 11 in this magazine. I'm going to zoom in. You guys could definitely see that. This was in this magazine. He was actually a top 8 in PPR. Okay. Now this is probably in standard. I don't know. But either way, they fade off, right? But mostly they typically copy and paste on a lot of stuff. And again, you're seeing it with Garrett Wilson here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think a much more realistic projection, and this is what he has in my app anyway, is that he's going to maintain about the same level of targets. I got him at 145 targets. I've got him a huge bump in fantasy production. I'm projecting a full 40 points more in his projection, 40 fantasy points more than the ESPN projections right now, which puts him into an elite status, a top 5, top 6 player. And so in his position. So, again, which is more realistic, people out there, for projections? Is ESPN giving you the right information? I don't think they are, man. I think this is bad projections. And I think it's because they're afraid. They're afraid to project the breakout because they're afraid of being wrong. But I don't think I'm going out on a limb here projecting these better stats for Garrett Wilson this year.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've reached the point now where people are actually waking up and they're fully aware that the consensus rankings are fake. I was a big trendsetter in that space, telling people this is Consheepsus, this consensus is not the way to go. And now more and more people are finally awake to the lies, to the deceit, to the straight copy and paste. And yeah, you're right, Jim. It's absolute fear. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to go so far out to take a risk. Like last year, I was the guy that said Kenneth Walker over Rashad Penny. Nobody
Right.
would put their neck on the line and say something like that. It just didn't make logical sense. The pecking order was Rashad Penny. He was the veteran there. But I looked at him like, this does not make sense, guys. This guy, years to wow us, we're not wowed. Walker was drafted in the second round. You got to go Walker, fade Penny, go Walker. I'm feeling the same thing when you look at situations with Travis Etienne and you look at a guy like Tank Bigsby. I'm all over Tank Bigsby later and avoiding Etienne in the early rounds. Why? Because Etienne has not wowed us. First year he was injured. Not a good sign if you're a rookie coming in. And then the second year, very inconsistent. So Etienne's a fade for me. Bigsby's a draft later. And maybe I hit the home run on Bigsby. But either way, I'm fading the catastrophe. What is it? Catastrophe?
Catastrophe.
In the early rounds, like people did with Petty last year. So it's about seeing things before they happen, anticipating, and that's what the 16-round plus tool does, and that's what the 60-round draft solution does. This is outside of the box thinking, so that you guys are aware, and everything we project is projecting forward, and we integrate the new situations, which other people don't do. So, Jim, let's just get to the second guy here and kind of take a look at his projections. We're talking Chris Olave here.
Yeah.
Obviously, very different than last year. I mean, very similar to last year, right?
Oh, well, yeah, again, it's the same kind of situation. We've got Chris Olave, great rookie year, 119 targets, ended up with 72 catches for 1,042 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that was with Andy Dalton, who is a has-been quarterback. He has not been good for years. He's just a journeyman at this point, a failed quarterback. And he did very well. And now, they're bringing in Derek Carr. Now, I know you and I have lots of issues with Derek Carr. We do not like Derek Carr. But I think we can both agree that Derek Carr is an upgrade over Andy Dalton. Would you agree with that, Counselor?
Yes, I would say that is safe as much. And it's coming from me, for the person who absolutely does not believe in Derek Carr as a reality quarterback who hasn't even won one playoff game and he's gotten paid. But that's a whole other topic. I don't want to go on a Derek Carr rant here. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge upgrade. You're going to get the consistent passing and the consistent performance of Derek Carr to you. And you're going into your second year. You looked good the first year. There's no way really but up for this guy.
Right, exactly. And we can see that Derek Carr can support a higher volume passing offense. Andy Dalton cannot. Andy Dalton was like bottom 6 right now. The Saints were bottom 6 in pass attempts last year. Andy Dalton on the Las Vegas Raiders was actually top 12. So in pass volume. And so I think we're going to see a nice increase in pass volume. We know that Derek Carr does and can support wide receiver 1. I mean, look at what he did with Davante Adams last year. Now, I'm not saying Chris Olave is Davante Adams level of talent, but clearly Chris Olave is a very young emerging talent in the league. So he's still ascending, right? He's still an ascending player. Let's see here. Derek Carr had 502 pass attempts last year. He averaged about 6 more pass attempts per game than Andy Dalton did. And of course, targeted his number 1 receiver 180 times last year. So I'm not saying 180 targets is going to Chris Olave, but ESPN looked at this and here's what they projected. They projected he's going to get 2 additional targets this year. That's what they're projecting for Chris Olave.
It's safe. That's the safe thing to do. Why would you take a chance and help people properly? You're going to play it safe, and that's what they do. And this is why I do what I do. And this is why you see me yelling in videos, because I don't like the lies, the deceit. This is the BS that happens every year, and you're seeing it right now. And again, you're saying, well, some people say, well, Joe, I don't believe ESPN projections. I understand, and I know most people here are awake to all this BS. But at the end of the day, this diarrhea is still this vomit is still being projected to people. It's disgusting, man. I can't believe it. It's just unbelievable that they're still in business.
And because of these projections is part of the reason why Chris Olave is, I think, artificially suppressed on the draft board. I mean, he's a late second round, early third round player, but he is going behind players like T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, and who's the third one? These wide receiver 2s. Jalen Waddle. He's going behind all 3 of those guys.
Great.
And this guy's a 1 on a team with a good quarterback that's coming in there. It's going to utilize him a lot. Again, the ESPN projecting 15 more fantasy points than he did last year. That's what they're projecting that he's going to do. Wow. Way to go out on a limb there, ESPN. I mean, come on, really?
It's not just them. It's a lot of the other sites, the magazines, everyone playing it safe. You look at everybody's rankings, even influencers like myself that have been at this are just doing the same thing. They want to play it safe. And that's not how you're going to win. Consensus rankings will not help you win. And that is why the 16 round draft solution has been so successful over the past, so I started in 2018 and it just keeps getting better and better. Is because people are waking up to the BS. They're aware of it. They don't want it anymore. And they want something that's viable and will actually help them win. And again, this is the success of 16 rounds. So again, if you haven't got it, make sure you grab it.
Yeah.
So take a look at Olave. I mean, again, just direct copy and paste. That's why Jim wanted to name it copy and paste. I wanted to call it lies. Either way, I think copying and pasting is lying because you're not being truthful. You're not anticipating the proper information. So yeah, copy and paste BS.
Yeah, and so this third one is I think the most egregious. This third player I want to talk about, and that's Trevor Lawrence. And I've checked him across numerous sites as far as what their projections are. They're all projecting about the same as what ESPN is projecting, and I don't get it. First of all, Trevor Lawrence is a phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
He's entering his third year. We've seen massive breakouts. Well, we saw a breakout last year. I mean, he did great in his sophomore year. I think he was the QB. He ended as the QB7 on the year. He's got a fantastic coach. I mean, just remember, Peterson, the head coach, was the guy that got Carson Wentz into the MVP conversation on their Super Bowl run when he was still with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, if you could do that, you could do anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. This guy's really good, and he knows how good Trevor Lawrence is. And the formula for winning a Super Bowl right now, to get your team to the Super Bowl, is you take your franchise quarterback, and then you surround him through the draft and through free agency with massive talent. Bring in an elite wide receiver one if you can, and just watch this team ride itself right to the Super Bowl. We've seen it. Look at the jump that like Josh Allen did when they finally brought in Stephon Diggs, right? When they paired him with an elite number one wide receiver,
right?
All of a sudden his stats exploded. He went from he's maybe a low QB1, high QB2 to this guy is one of the best in the league. And that's what I think is going to happen with Trevor Lawrence. The formula is there. They brought in Calvin Ridley, an elite wide receiver one. He's already surrounded with excellent talent. He's got he's got Christian Kirk. He's got Zay Jones. He's got Evan Ingram. He's got Travis Etienne. He's got Tank Bigsby. They brought in Tank Bigsby as well. This offense is ready to go, and yet with all this information, ESPN thinks Trevor Lawrence is going to do slightly worse this year than he did last year. A little bit of a drop off. Does that seem realistic to you, Counselor?
And I love Trevor Lawrence this year. I think the sky's the limit. Obviously, the upgrade with Ridley. ATN's now going to get integrated. Bigsby's there. I'm just excited about this offense as a whole, and I really feel that like Lawrence has actually found his groove. More touchdowns, maybe a better touchdown interception ratio. They have like 25 touchdowns last year. That's going up. I think he's generational talent. He's up there, and contract year is coming up soon, isn't it? Next year, is it for Lawrence?
Yeah, this is also a contract year for him. I mean, the third year breakout among quarterbacks is a pretty well established trope. It happens all the time, and so when you're sitting there and you're looking at the situation and you're saying that Trevor Lawrence is not going to do any better in 2023 than he did in 2022 with the additional talent he has and the additional development, just being in that system for a second year. I mean, remember last year he was learning that system from the ground up because his whole rookie year was just a lost year.
Yeah.
So he made incredible strides. And to think that, well, that's it. That's the best that Trevor Lawrence is going to do, I think is just it's absurd. And it's offensive. Quite frankly, it's offensive to Trevor Lawrence that they're projecting him out like this, because I think it's I think they are way shortchanging these breakouts. That's what it is. They're just afraid to call a breakout. They're afraid of it. So they're just going to say, oh, he'll just do what he did last year.
And you wonder my frustration through the years, and that's why I explained to you, this is why I call them Consheepsus. This is why I do what I do, is because I'm exposing and showing people the flat out lies and the deceit here that's going on. But I love Trevor Lawrence, big contract year coming. Ultra talented, upgrading the offense, super excited. And again, there's a shining light to all this. There's a light at the end of the tunnel because this information is out there. That's a good thing for us because we get the value for guys that could break out, and we explain that in the 16 round draft solution. Again, why is Joe plugging 16 rounds after every player? Because again, the 16 round draft solution is the solution to this nonsense, and I don't know how else to say it. All right, let's move on here, Jim. Who else do we got here that we're going to compare?
Okay, so now we're going to flip the script, right? We're instead of talking about these beautiful ascending players that are coming into the league and are just going to take the league by fire. We're going to talk about the old guys, the established guard, these names that everybody knows, but they are getting older. They're getting up there in the years, and so what do they do with the projections on these players? And I want to talk about. Let's start talking about Joe Mixon. Because last year, if what is that?
I'm adding a sound effect. Did you like it? Did you like the sound effect?
There's some magic was happening or something. What's happening?
Hold on. Here's a better one for Joe Mixon. You ready? Hold on.
Okay. I would think a better one would be like womp 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 or something like that. There you go.
All right, let's move on to Joe. I got to start adding more sound effects to the show. I'm still working. I got this new setup here, and we're gonna get going here with this new stuff. So anyway, let's get to Joe Mixon here.
Yeah. So let's talk about it now. If you look at Joe's year-end stats, they look okay, right? He was like 3.9 yards per carry, 814 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns. So you're like, oh, all right, he looks okay. He's not 28 yet. He's only 27. But he has been in the league for 7 years now. And so he entered at a very, very young age. And he's been basically the workhorse the entire time he's been here. But basically last season, I don't know if you had him on any of your teams, but there was 1 week where he like absolutely annihilated the NFL. I don't know if you remember, but it was November 6th versus Carolina. This dude ended up with 153 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, along with 58 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown.
All right.
Now, he only got 10 touchdowns last year. So that means he got literally half his touchdowns on that week. The rest of the year, he only got 5 touchdowns in the other 16 games that he played. And if you take away, and somehow, I don't know what happened. Obviously, clearly he was on fire that game. 7 yards per carry. But you take away his yardage from this game, and his yards per carry was 3.5 for the rest of the season. And he was terrible. He was a terrible fantasy option. Massive underperformance, massive bust. And again, 27 years old, 7 years in the league. So what does ESPN think that I'll let you guess. What do you think ESPN thinks that he's going to do this year in their projections?
Man, I don't think like them, so I don't know. I'm going to think that they are going to bump him up. I think they're going to think he's going to have a great season because he's on Burrow's team.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're basically saying that he's going to go back up over 4 yards per carry, even though he was way, way below it this past year. But they are projecting a very, very, very slight decline, 12 fewer fantasy points this year than last year for Joe Mixon.
I mean, sorry to interrupt. This is not brain surgery here, Jim. You just got to kind of use common sense sometimes. And I know Mixon could have a good year and a good offense, but the guy is not young. And he only had like 1 or 2 major good years his whole career. He's kind of been revived with this new offense, and he's had his off-field issues. Go for the young studs. Go for the guys that have upside. Avoid these guys that have, just kind of either on their way down or kind of been up and down. Just use some common sense. Joe Mixon is not a guy that appeals to me at all.
Yeah, and he's never been good around the goal line. He's never been. I mean, at least when Zeke was terrible last season, at least he got you 11 touchdowns because he was being used on the goal line. Mixon can't even do that when he was good. I mean, like he's never been good at that. He does have a little bit of value because he's utilized in the passing game. But I think that would fall off as well if Jamar Chase can play a full year. I think that's a big reason why he got such high usage last year is because, Jamar Chase missed 5 games. But anyway, I've got him projected right now RB 25. But he's being taken in drafts at RB 17. So this is a bust. This is a flex play. You're having to pay wide receiver, running back 2, draft capital 4. Don't do it. Don't take this guy, man. It's going to be abysmal. He just no value. There's no value there. There's no upside.
I'm just pulling up my notes here. What was the name? Is it Zach Evans? Who was the rookie here? Stick with me. Oh, Chase Brown, round 5 pick. I watched tape on him. I'm looking at my notes here because I got my trusty notes here. There's too many rookies to keep track of. Chase Brown's not a guy I'm really targeting. They got Chris Evans, who was a 6th-round pick. Again, I had to go over these stats. See, look, guys, I make notes for you guys. They have Chris Evans there. He was a 6th-round pick in 2021. He's done nothing, okay? They brought in Chase Brown, round 5. They got Travion Williams there. I believe he's still there. Last year, Pirine, 95 attempts. Pirine, I don't think he's there anymore, so he's not going to be a concern.
He's not there.
So there you go. So, you got Chase Brown there. So, I don't know. I watched tape on Chase Brown. It looked boring, safe at best. So I'm not sure if, let me put up his college numbers here. Actually, he was a workhorse in college. Chase Brown, 10 touchdowns, 320 attempts, 1,643 yards, ran a 4.43. You never know, man. 5'11", 200. Maybe Chase Brown becomes the guy. But again, I'm just not investing in Joe Mixon. And maybe I'll stash Chase Brown if I have room on my bench later. Who knows?
I think Chase Brown's a good stash. I've heard he's really good between the tackles. He could become their goal line guy. There's upside there. So, and I believe he is a 16-rounder. I believe he is. But again, but he's going like 14th round, 15th round. Shoot, man. Why not? Why not? Because Joe Mixon is a disaster. So don't even bother with that.
All right, last guy here. Let's compare the notes here. Is it going to be another one of these?
It sure is, man. And this is another guy, very deceptive. If you look at his year-end stats, very deceptive. It's Mike Evans. Last year ended up with 127 targets, got 77 catches for 1,124 yards, 6 touchdowns. But again, he had one monster game. And of course, it was the last game of the year during the fantasy playoffs when anybody who took Mike Evans would not be in the fantasy playoffs for sure. But in the last week of the regular season, he got a 10-catch, 207-yard, 3-touchdown explosion. And basically, A, it put him over 1,000 yards for the year. B, that was half his touchdowns for the year. The other half, again, the other 15 games he played, he only got 3 touchdowns. He only averaged 4.7 catches per game for 66 yards. This was a guy that was going in the top 4 rounds last year. We're talking a complete disaster for your fantasy team. And now, he doesn't have Tom Brady anymore. Instead, he gets the awesome upgrade of Baker Mayfield, right? You think Baker Mayfield's an upgrade from Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, big time. Not. And then they got Kyle Trask there and all these John Wolford. I don't even know who they got there as backups fighting for this job. But Godwin's there. We don't know what's going to happen with this offense. And for that reason, I think he's good value based on the fact that he might get volume. But am I drafting him? Probably not. I recommended him, I believe, in 16 rounds as an option. But when you look at me, when I do my mock drafts in 16 rounds, he's not a guy I'm actually drafting. When people say, well, Joe, what about a recommendation? And I make other recommendations, just not a top priority. But like I said, I think the volume may be there, and that's what's kind of enticing. Because again, I'm not really sold on Godwin. I don't know, man. This whole offense is kind of gross.
I think Tampa Bay is playing for the number 1 pick next year. That's what I think. They want that Mahomes clone guy that's going to be in the draft next year. I don't know his name yet, but there's a guy that has the same kind of skill set as Mahomes, and there's several teams that are going to be playing for that number 1 pick, and I think definitely Tampa Bay is one of them. Baker Mayfield's never been able to support a wide receiver 1, never ever in his career. And also the other thing is Mike Evans is 30. He's also at that point where he's going to start just declining. That's just where he is. He's had 7 years in the league right now, 7,000-yard seasons in a row. I'd be willing to bet money that it's not going to happen again this year. He's not going to hit 1,000 yards. So
I don't trust him. Baker Mayfield is Johnny Manziel 2.0 that just happened to play a little bit longer in the NFL.
Right. He's sober Johnny is what he is. He's sober Johnny.
The same person. When I see Manziel, I see Johnny Manziel. I said when I see Manziel, I see Baker Mayfield. I don't see any difference between these two guys.
Right.
Again, the league is this desperate for quarterbacks that Baker Mayfield is starting in the NFL. Years to wow us, we're not wowed. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks at quarterback. This is why you're better off going quarterback early. And if you miss out on the early guys, I like the Trevor Lawrence and Herbert kind of round 5, 6, kind of if you can get them there in a one quarterback league. Because after that, who knows? I mean, are we going to get the best Aaron Rodgers we got, or is he going to do like Russell Wilson that happened last year where he switched teams and became a dud? Is Russell Wilson going to bounce back? Tons of rookie quarterbacks. How are they going to do? Then you got your Desmond Ritters and Baker Mayfields, right? So it's very important this year more than ever to anchor your team with that ace quarterback that's proven, because it's going to be a crapshoot. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, and again, there's 3 quarterbacks on contract year this year. I love them all: Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and also Justin Herbert. Right, those are the 3. So I think all those guys have great upside this year for your fantasy team. But like I said, I love Trevor Lawrence. I'm actually in a draft right now. I'm approaching the 6th round pick. It's a slow draft. My goal is to take Trevor Lawrence in the 6th round. So I love it. And I got him I'll have him paired up with Calvin Ridley too. So I love that too. So
yeah.
But
well, now you guys are
so again,
I don't know what else to say. Now this is waking you guys up a little bit. If you haven't woken up, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe to Dominate. Again, just kind of showing you the contrast here of like where they're projecting, how they finished last year, and how it's just so. It just doesn't make sense. These are just 5 examples. I mean, we can sit down and go over every player, but it'll take forever.
Yeah, I mean, again, especially like I said, especially when it comes to the breakouts, the young players, and the old players, there's just this static. I'm looking at projections for Aaron Jones, who turns 29, for Derrick Henry, who is 29, for for players like Austin Eckler, man, Austin Eckler, and they're basically they're just saying they will do exactly what they've done in the past. And it does not work that way. That's not how nature works, man. I mean, it is, you hit a certain age and you hit that terminal decline, and it is fast and it is devastating. And you just don't want any part of that for your fantasy team. I know you know the names because they've been in the league for a long time, but you got to know when they're ready to ride off into the sunset, and you've got to be off that horse when they do, because it's just bad. It's going to be bad. So, word to the wise out there. Be aware.
Guys. So be aware. Do not follow the Consheepsus rankings. Lion mentality. Grab the 60-round draft solution. We'll see you in the course, and just smash your leads, guys. That's simple. That's why we created the solution, so you can avoid all of this garbage. I mean, it's that simple, guys. You could see it. We're laying it up for you guys to play in sight. The lies, the deceit. Don't take part in it. Subscribe to this channel for the truth, and drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. That's it, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys. We are out.
I feel better now. I got this off my chest. I feel better.
We're just revealing the truth. That's all we're doing. All right, guys. We're out. Make sure you subscribe. Daily content coming your way. We're out. Talk soon.